Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Tara, and I am a board member of the Friends of Ottawa. So, this is something we try to do every month at least, where we bring in someone from the outside to talk about wetlands, nature, all that kind of stuff. So, we're going to be having a great presentation tonight, and I also have my co-host, also board member TJ, on as well. If you guys have any technical problems or any questions, we're here for that too. So I am going to hand it over to Renee. She's going to be talking about a great program about restoring wetlands. And if you guys want to make sure that your microphones are turned off during this time, there is going to be a couple of little interaction things. So you guys can either use the microphone or chat during that, and we'll be taking all of the larger questions for the whole presentation at the very end. And TJ, I believe, is going to drop down a couple of links in the chat to the Friends of Ottawa website, our events page as well. I believe we do have a holiday open house coming up on December 8th. That's a Sunday. So if you want to come see the refuge all decked out, in Christmas decorations, big Christmas tree, I think we're going to have hot cocoa and donuts, and it's going to be a great time. So if you guys are around for that, that's December 8th again. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Renee and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Tara. Hi, everyone. As Tara said, my name is Renee. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I really love getting a chance to talk to people about the work that we do and the importance of it. So I'm really glad to be here. I would love to see where people are tuning in from. So if you would like, you can drop a comment in the chat and letting me know what city or state you're in. I know these sometimes attract people who lived in the area and out of state. So it's always cool to see where we're reaching. So while you're doing that, I will go into a little bit of back history on me. So I am the communications and outreach manager for the Swamp Conservancy, and I joined about midway through June this year. So while I have not been at the Conservancy for very long, I have been in the natural science field for about 6 years now. I am a naturalist by trade, which is a fancy way to say that I love to get people outside, learning and enjoying the outdoors. Um, oh, I see some people maybe dropping in the chat. We got some Columbus spread across Ohio. That's awesome. Okay. So I will go ahead and start moving on with the conversation because you didn't come to this talk to listen to learn about me. But before we hop right in, as Tara said, I do want to lay down some expectations regarding this presentation. Like I mentioned previously, I am a naturalist by trade, not a lecturer or a professor. So a lot of what I like to do is talk with people about nature. So there will be some moments that I will ask a question to you all, and I would love for you to type in chat with your answer, or you can even unmute and talk if you feel comfortable with that. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into it. Of this presentation. Let's go ahead and go over what exactly a wetland is. So we have kind of a baseline knowledge. A wetland is an area of land that is either covered by water or saturated with water for at least part of the year. The depth and duration of the water found in the wetland varies depending on a number of environmental factors. Wetlands go by many names, and I do mean many, many names, such as swamps, peatland slopes, marshes, muskegs, bogs, fens, potholes, and mires. Most scientists consider swamp, marshes, and bogs to be the three major kinds of wetlands. Wetlands can exist in many kinds of climates, and they are found on every continent except Antarctica. They vary in size from isolated prairie potholes to huge sharp salt marshes along our coast. While some wetlands are flooded woodlands full of trees, others are more flat, like watery grasslands, while others are dominated by thick, spongy mosses. Wetlands are defined by the three H's. The saturation of a wetland soil are uniquely adapted to their watery, which is that hydric soil. Wetland plants are called hydrophytes, which is one of the three definitions of a wetland. Seasonally dry wetlands or wetlands with slow-moving water often can support trees and other sturdy vegetation, while more frequently flooded wetlands have mosses or grasses as their dominant hydrophytes. Cool. Furthermore, there are two major categories of wetlands: coastal wetlands. In Ohio, we have Tara. All right, guys, I'm going to turn off my camera. Just so getting back to it. Uh, in Ohio, we have inland wetlands because we wetlands on a 1 to 3 scale. With category one wetland is like low quality wetland that provide the least public health, habitat, and safety services. They are usually dominated by non-natives or dominated by native species, but are generally without.
She might be having some issues. She should be on soon.
I'm back.
Oh, but
Hello?
yeah. Hey, Renee, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, everyone good? What was the last thing you guys heard?
Category 1 wetlands. I mean, I think that's where
Okay, great. Then I will go ahead and pick off from there. So we have category ones, which are our lowest quality, and then category two, which is about that mid-tier. So they support a lot of native life, but not necessarily endangered life or endangered species. They are a good candidate for future restoration or improvement. Whereas category three wetlands in Ohio are our highest quality wetlands and contain or provide habitat for threatened or endangered species. They also may be filled with high quality forested wetlands, have a lot of vernal pools, or wetlands or a type of wetlands which are scarce regionally, such as bogs and fens.
Renee, we lost the share also. Would you just mind sharing it again?
Yeah, absolutely. More. Sorry about this, guys.
No worry. I think that Zoom does that, once you disconnect. So,
Oh, Tara, I don't think I'm a host anymore. I don't know if I can share.
we'll make you the host. So give us a second. Yeah. I think you are the host now. Should be able to.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I still can't share. Hold on. There it is. Okay. Okay. Can everyone see now?
Yep. I can see it now.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
So now that we have some background, let's go ahead and jump to looking at Ohio. Now this is a question for the audience, now that we're back and rolling with it. When you think of the elsewhere, so I'm very interested to see what your answers are too. What is the first thing that you think of? And this is referring to our natural landscape. So think of predominant natural areas or natural elements that you would think of. Go ahead and put that in the chat. Do we have any biters? Anyone who feels comfortable unmuting as well? Okay, we got forest, plains, So when I talk to people and I ask people this question, commonly the first answer that I get is that Northwest Ohio is very flat. So we have those plains, a lot of people talk about agriculture, because we are very well known for agricultural fields, of the flat farm fields that we can see for miles upon miles, spreading wide and far. But at one point, the point I want to get across is that Northwest Ohio was a wetland, and it currently is a wetland, or at least it tries to be, as you can see with our flooded farm fields. What's important to know is that our current landscape is highly managed. There are drainage tiles or pipes that are underneath most of our farms, and they are placed there to keep the land dry. If it weren't for the tiles, we would still be in a wetland in Northwest Ohio. In fact, we are in what was once one of the largest wetlands in the United States, the Great Black Swamp. So the Great Black Swamp was formed as a result of the Wisconsin Glacier, covering the land about 20,000 years ago. When the glacier retreated, it left a flattened surface covered with impermeable clay, and then furthermore each other and provided some higher ground. This area was covered in a dense forest that when the leaves from the trees and other plant materials fell into the water, they decomposed in the water and the water turned black, which is maybe one of the reasons why the Great Black Swamp got its moniker. But a lot of people actually don't know what specifically gave it its name. There's a lot of reasons. That just might be one of them. So the Great Black Swamp was a massive piece of wilderness. It stretched from the shores of Lake Erie almost to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And this massive network of wet forests, marshes, and wet prairies spanned about 1,500 square miles of nearly impassable wilderness. Today, however, less than 1% of the Great Black Swamp remains. So we here at the Great Black Swamp Conservancy like to say that we protect two of the last few true remaining remnants of the Great Black Swamp. And this is Bell Woods. It is a 72-acre plot of what would have covered most of Northwest Ohio back in the day of the Black Swamp. This sits right behind our offices in Pimperville, and it is not a pristine woodlot. You can see sunlight coming through and the reflection of the water. Back in the days of the Black Swamp, the tree canopy would have been so thick that sunlight wouldn't have been able to penetrate down to the ground, which is another reason why it may have been called Black Swamp. But this lot is very, very close to what it was just like 300 years ago. There has been some logging and grazing over the years, which is why we can see that sunlight peeking through. But this natural area does retain flora and fauna, as well as certain water characteristics that would have been present at the time of the settlement of the swamp. As you can see, this entire woodlot becomes blanketed in trillium in the spring, which is that white flower here. And if you know anything about state flowers, that is also our state flower. Walking into the woods in the spring can definitely kind of feel like you're walking into a magical forest or a fairy grove. It is incredible, truly, the amount of wildflowers and wildlife that call Bell Woods right behind our offices home. The second one we protect is forest woods. Here we can see that dark, flat, rich soil and vernal pools. This plot of land stretches 394 acres and is the largest remaining woodland still standing in Northwest Ohio outside of the oak openings region. I mentioned before that the state of Ohio grades wetlands on a scale of 1 to 3, with 1 being the lowest and 3 being the highest. Both Bell Woods and Forest Woods were designated as a grade 3 wetland. The fact, unfortunately, remains is that these areas are just remnants of what used to be. We have done an incredible amount of restoration in both of these areas that serve as a critical habitat for many native species. Still, the combined acreage of these two plots of lands only surmount to just under 500 acres. In comparison, the Great Black Swamp spanned more than 1 million acres. So the big question is, where did the swamp go? Well, it was drained. The Great Black Swamp drained over a period of several decades, beginning in the 1840s and ending by the 1900s. It started in earnest after the ditching law was passed in 1859, and the swamp was ultimately drained for agricultural use, travel and settlement of the area, and for the health of the settlers that lived here. But draining of wetlands isn't just a local phenomena. Things like population increases, urbanization, climate change, and changing consumption patterns have all fueled changes to land and water use across the globe, which has led wetlands to degrade. In fact, over half of the US wetlands are gone, with Ohio estimated to have lost 90 to 97% of its historic wetlands. Globally, wetlands have lost 21% of their area since the 1700s, with most of that loss occurring in the 1900s and beyond. That's equal to about 1.3 million square miles, which if you were to put all the lost wetland on a map, it would equal out to be about the size of India. Which, speaking of a map, this map here shows the extent of wetlands across the globe in the 1700s. The lighter areas are areas that had some wetlands, but they may have not been predominantly wetland area, whereas the darker greens were either completely covered by wetlands or predominantly wetlands. This map helps us visualize where the degradation of wetlands had occurred since the 1700s. Data before the 1700s is a little splotchy. There wasn't a lot of recording done before then. So until recently, we actually didn't know how much of our wetlands across the world that we had truly lost. Before a study came out last year, it was feared that we had lost somewhere between 50 and 87% of our wetlands across the globe. We now know that that percentage loss isn't quite as staggering, though globally, we are still losing our wetlands at about a rate of 0.7% per year. Here you can see that much of the loss is still concentrated in the US, Europe, and China, where our wetlands are under the most pressure from agricultural, industrialization, and urbanization. In the US alone, the rate of loss has accelerated by 50% since 2009, resulting in over 670,000 acres lost. As of 2024, we lose about 80,000 acres of wetlands per year in the US. Now, if we take the two maps and overlay them, we can better visualize just how much of our wetlands we have lost in comparison of what remains. So that green overlay is what was spread across the globe in the 1700s, and the orange and yellows are areas of degradation of wetlands or loss of wetlands. And to even make it more clear, here is a map of our current distribution of wetlands on the right versus to what was present in the 1700s. We can see that significant loss of wetlands across the globe. So let's take a moment to regroup. This is going to be another question out to you guys in a minute. But we know that we are losing our wetlands, but we're losing them to more homes, more farms, and more industry. These are things society. So why is this necessarily a bad thing? Why does it matter? Before we really dive into that, though, we do need to address kidneys. And I know what you're, just hear me out, okay? I know it's gonna be a little bit weird of a topic, but I promise it will make sense in the long run. So just bear with me. So this is another question for you guys. Please go ahead to feel free to unmute or put it in the chat box. What happens to the human body when we lose our kidneys? You can give me one word answer, a couple sentences, whatever you feel comfortable, just put it into the chat box or unmute. Anyone have anything for me? We lose filtration. Yeah. What about toxins? Very bluntly, we can die, yes. We can't clean our system. Yes, thank you, Carolyn. So if we think about that as a whole, the human body, we lose our filtration, we can't clean our systems, we can't clear out our toxins. So we take that concept of when we lose our kidneys and we apply it to nature, what do we think happens when nature loses its kidneys? Now you can go ahead and put an answer into the chat. Again, this is a part that I'm welcoming to you to interact, but for the sake of time, I am going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. I want to see if anyone knows what I'm going to go talk about. But anyways, so the old adage is that wetlands are nature's kidneys. When a human body loses its kidneys or a body is no longer able to filter out toxins, those toxins build in the body, and it can cause catastrophic effects on our health. When nature's large bodies of freshwater, like the Great Lakes, no longer have their wetlands, they no longer have the ability to successfully filter out the waste from the water that flows through them. This can have catastrophic effects on the health of these larger bodies of water. One of these negative effects is something that I'm sure a lot of us in this call are familiar with. And when I go to the next slide, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. So these are the Lake Erie algal blooms. These are some significant algal blooms over the last 5 years or so. The one on the bottom left, this cut here, is a pretty infamous image that came out of our 2014 water crisis, where 500,000 people lost access to our water because the toxic algae had gotten into our infiltration system. Now, I know these images are big and they're frightening, but would anyone here believe me when I say that algal blooms are normal? They occur even in the healthiest of landscapes. Algal blooms, however, become harmful when they grow out of control, like the ones here pictured in Lake Erie. Another question for you guys, please go ahead and put it into the chat. Does anyone know what a major fuel source is for these blooms? Again, in case someone didn't hear me, does anyone know what is a major source? Not kidneys, no. Fertilizers. Yep, you're on the right track. So fertilizers control contain something what we call excess nutrients, the algal blooms in the lake. But while harmful algal blooms occur naturally, human activities have led to more frequent and larger and more intense blooms, even if it would still be nitrogen and phosphorus supplied by the landscape. What's different is how we have changed how it flows down to the lake by removing our wetlands. Instead of a slow feed of water into the lake, we now have a very flashy hydrology. So you can think of quick, sudden water movement from heavy rain events rushing across the land and carrying a lot of nutrients and sediment with it. It's all then deposited into the western basin of Lake Erie, fueling these significant algal blooms that we see here. So if we take a step back and look at Lake Erie as a whole, on top of the natural benefit of having a significant source of freshwater right next to us, Lake Erie is a significant source of economic prosperity to our region. So Lake Erie accounts for 30% of Ohio's total tourism industry. The Lake Erie coastal region has an impact of about 20 billion in Ohio in 2023, and just over 280,000 jobs rely on Lake Erie. So we've taken that information and look at the harmful effects of the blooms. It's easy to see the impact that they can have on our communities. Here are just three major problems we are currently facing due to these blooms. So the first one is that these blooms are running big. Blooms are something that Lake Erie has experienced since before the 1990s. They started once we started draining the swamp, and they have continued since then. But the problem is that they are becoming more frequent, more intense, and larger in size. This has led to an increase in human and wildlife health being threatened. So the blue-green algae can also cause a number of health issues from acute to chronic. And we know this by interacting with the algae itself. So we know that when we go into the water has a chance of making us sick, But another thing that we are currently studying is also how does the air that comes off the algae in the lake study. So keep an eye out for it in the future. And the last problem, but not the last problem, one of the three major that I'm focusing on today is the fact that blooms are costly. So we are seeing an increase in water treatment care. A 2019 study found that during algal blooms, communities along the Lake Erie alone lost $142 million annually. So this loss of money occurs from drops in tourist and recreation revenues because people cannot go out and enjoy the lake, or they don't want to go out swimming or go fishing. Falling housing values. A lot of people have moved away from the area due to these algal blooms. As water filters into our system, and it costs more to treat it every year as we suffer through these blooms. So when we think of Ohio and we think about Lake Erie and the effect of removing our wetlands, it's easier to see the importance of wetlands as a whole, which I'm going to go into right now. So wetlands are critical to human and planet life, point blank. Directly or indirectly, they provide almost all of the world's consumption of fresh water. More than 1 billion people systems. Life thrives in wetlands. About 40% of the world's plant and animal species depend on wetlands to survive, with 30% of all known fish species being found in wetlands and depending on wetlands for their survival. So far, with 200 new ones discovered annually on average. These incredible ecosystems support a tapestry of biodiversity upon which we all depend. Wetlands protect our wildlife, and they provide us food, clean water, and jobs while protecting our communities from floods, storms, and even mitigating the impacts of climate change. So I know I can throw a lot of fancy statistics at you saying we have all this incredible biodiversity in wetlands, which is incredibly important, but I think telling you guys a story to really impart their impact would be good. So this story is not a story that occurred in Ohio, but it does speak to the impacts that wetlands can have. So this story is a story that I heard this past summer at a national conference for land trusts that really stuck with me. As I was attending a seminar hosted by a lovely woman from the Vermont River Conservancy, she was so brave for telling the story, as she choked back tears, as I kind of am now. I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with what happened in Vermont last year in July, but Vermont experienced flooding that was worse than Tropical Storm Irene. So on July 10th and 11th of 2023, prolonged heavy rains dumped 3 to 9 inches of rain across the state in 48 hours. Pictured on the bottom is the Wrightsville Dam that overlooks the capital city of Vermont, Montclair. On July 11th, the water level came within a foot of breaching the dam, which you can see right here. If that dam would have breached, there was a chance that millions, if not billions, of gallons of water could have flooded into the already flooded city of Montclair, which you can see here. It was estimated that only 3 more inches of rain would have caused the dam to breach. Thankfully, on July 12th, the water receded, and the dam didn't breach. Pictured above, however, is a wetland easement that is protected by the Vermont River Conservancy. A little after the historic rain event, they were able to, by calculating the acreage and the amount of water that commonly rose in the wetland, the Vermont River Conservancy was able to estimate that this restored wetland was able to keep 3 inches of rainwater out of the dam. So there is a good chance that without this wetland having caused the dam to breach. So when I heard the story, and when everyone in the room heard the story, we were all pretty choked up because it just puts in perspective just how important wetlands are not only to our health, but to our safety. And I know while this didn't happen in Ohio, Ohio is not any stranger to flooding. If you spend any time in our area and you've been to Grand Rapids, Ohio, you may have been to Ludwig Mill, which has markers on the side of the building where there have been past historic floods that have reached significant heights. So for me, this is a pretty clear picture and tale of the what if when disaster strikes. So now that we know all of this, what do we do? A common question I commonly get is, should we bring back the swamp? And I think that's a really interesting question to me, because it's truly a human question. But my belief right now is not really. So the swamp was a horrible place. Draining the Black Swamp wasn't illogical back in the day. Malaria, cholera, dysentery, they were all things that were rampant in the days of the swamp, largely because we didn't know any better as a society. The question becomes not necessarily should we restore the swamp or put back the swamp to as it was, but figuring out instead that it's not one or the other. There's a gradient. The land is much more fluid than we can conceptualize in our lifetimes. It was a prairie, it was a swamp, it was everything in between. It went back and forth, changing and moving like a giant wave across Lake Erie, coming and going as it followed the lake levels. I heard this in a story done by Midstory, but I think that is a very helpful idea of understanding how to live with wetlands and natural areas. It takes some adaptation, and it takes some flexibility in being able to live in these areas that we truly do need. I think agricultural and natural habitats can coexist. We can have wildlife habitats, we can have clean water in natural areas, but still have a robust agricultural economy when we find those ways to coexist. The question is, though, what do we do? Well, that's still when organizations like us step in. So we are the mission of the Black Swamp Conservancy is to protect and preserve natural habitats in family farms in the Northwest Ohio for the benefit of the current and future generations. We are a nonprofit land trust that was formed back in 1993 by community members who were concerned about the rapid development of the area. For those who may not know what a land trust is, a land trust, or otherwise known as a land conservancy, is a community-based nonprofit organization. A land trust can be local, state, or regional in scope. We personally serve the region of Northwest Ohio, but we are part of a larger coalition of 32 Ohio land trusts. In that, we are one of 7 accredited land trusts in Ohio, awarded to a land trust by the Land Trust Accreditation Commission if and only if they meet the highest national standards for excellence in conservation permanence. And that we are part of a larger network of over 1,200 land trusts across the US, and in total, land trusts protect over 61 million acres of land across the nation. We here at the Conservancy protect just over 23,000 acres across 12 counties in Northwest Ohio. So to accomplish our mission, to answer that why, we target 4 major areas within our work. The first one is protecting water. Most of the land we protect and restore is to protect and improve our water quality. By targeting key areas within the Western Lake Erie Basin to implement wetland restoration or conservation of our natural areas, we are working to stop pollutants from entering Lake Erie, such as nitrogen and phosphorus, before they even have the chance to flow into the Maumee River. Protecting water is so important to us because by protecting water, we are working to foster resilient communities, restore healthy ecosystems, and provide cleaner drinking water for our communities. The second way we accomplish our mission is by conserving land. We conserve land in one of two ways: through land conservation agreements, which some of you may know as conservation easements, and through stewardship properties like nature preserves. In case people don't know what a land conservation agreement is, a land conservation agreement or a conservation easement are a voluntary agreement between a private landowner and a land trust to protect land so that it doesn't later become a parking lot or a shopping mall or developed in some way beyond what it currently is. Often, the conservation desire to protect their land as it currently stands. This may be a family farm or a natural area or a combination of the two. A third way that we approach our work is by restoring our natural habitats. As an organization, we not only work to restore wetlands, but also native forests and prairies. As mentioned earlier, this area is an intricate wetland complex made of many different ecosystems. By restoring multiple types of habitats, we are working to protect our endangered species that rely on those habitats, increase biodiversity, and support healthy native landscapes. The fourth, but not the last way, is by connecting people through education, outreach, and recreation. One major project that we are currently extremely proud of is our Learning Landscapes project, which is a project that focuses on providing both Otsego and Eastwood schools with resources and natural areas for students to learn about natural sciences and the environment in which they live. So while much of the land we protect is privately owned, some of our properties are open to the public. The properties featured on this map are protected properties that have public access or will have public access in the future once they're through restoration, whether it's by a public park or by permit. The ones marked in brown are our properties that we own and manage through our stewardship team, while those marked in green are easement properties that are owned and managed by other park districts. Frequently, we will take on a restoration project, and then once that restoration project is completed, we will donate it to a public entity or park district for their use. One such project, and I'm not going to play it because we are running out of time and also the internet connection isn't great, but one project that we do focus on is this video called Flowing Forward. It is a short documentary by Christy Frank and Alex Getz that we do. Unfortunately, I said do not have time for today, but I do recommend you check it out on your own time. It is a in-depth feature of one of our more recent projects, the 100-acre restoration of the 160. This project was funded by 2 grants from HU Ohio and one planted and was completed in partnership with Seneca Parks, Enviroscience Engineering, and River Reach Construction. It was the largest project that we took on to date. And it is a property in which we purchased, restored, and it has recently just been donated to Seneca Parks to become a public preserve. The video is available for viewing on our website and as well as YouTube. So big burning question is, why do we do what we do? As we come to the end of this presentation, I really just want to convey that everyone in Black Swamp Conservancy has their own reasons for doing the work that we do. For me, I think about the story from the Vermont River Conservancy, and to me, that's a pretty telling tale of why we do the work that we do. I think about the people that I've taken personally kayaking on the Maumee River and getting to experience the uniqueness of our area. But when it comes down to it, our work is for our current and future generations to be able to not only live in Northwest Ohio, but to thrive, be safe, and enjoy nature as we do. I think as a society, we have very short memories. For example, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire, and as a result, we have the Clean Water Act. What people forget is that the Cuyahoga River caught on fire many, many times before the Clean Water Act was passed. What we don't want is that the water supply to get shut off for 500,000 people many times before significant action is taken to correct it. Water is precious, and we're working as an organization to protect it. Losing our wetlands is a crisis. We cannot live without water. Our future depends on a transformed landscape and a coexistence with the Great Black Swamp. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you so, so much. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to come on either with their microphone or drop in the chat for us?
Renee, this is TJ. Do we have any like local areas that are one can visit, see the work that has been done by Black Swamp Observancy? What's the closest one here from the refuge?
The closest one from the refuge might be Nels. That is one of our
The
public
Nels
preserves.
property.
So it is
Oh,
it's near Catawba, or it's on Catawba Island. Nels, yep.
perfect. Yeah.
So that would be Nels Memorial Nature Preserve. But yes, we do actually have quite a few properties across Northwest Ohio as a whole. They are all available on our website. So that map is available, as well as the addresses of the sites that you're able to go visit and see the work that we've done.
Okay. Oh, yeah. No, this is great presentation, like the way you covered the topics. The interactive webinar was awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. If anyone has any questions later down the line, they're welcome to email me at blackswamp.org. This right here is a QR code to sign up for our newsletter if you want to stay in the loop of the work that we're doing. That is a great way to do it because a lot of our communications come through email. So signing up for that newsletter.
Okay,
Tara,
well, if no
I'm
one
not.
has any other questions, I'm not seeing anything here.
Yeah, no, I'm not seeing either. Yeah.
We can go ahead and wrap it up for this evening. Thank you everyone for coming out. In a couple of days, everyone who signed up using the registration link, they will get this recording here, but it'll take just a couple of days.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank
Renee,
you so
Tara.
much for having me tonight. I am so, yeah. And thank you everyone for attending.
Bye.